What do I know? I'm just a girl on the internet. It doesn't matter how hard I try because pretty much every year at the end of January or as I am starting to get into February, I always think about another goal or resolution that I want to add to my yearly vision board. I always begin to think of things that I did not think of in the first or second week of January. I like to believe that when the new year is starting, you have this very fresh mindset of all these things that you want to do for yourself, and you're thinking of more of these cliche resolutions, these cliche goals. And it's not until you really start to get a little bit into the new year in which you start thinking, hey, you know what I actually want to do this year? XYZ, or I really want to work on this, or I really want to set this goal for myself. And I like to call those unintentional resolutions because these are not things that were initially on your list. And mine is to stop saying the word like so much as a filler word in the middle of sentences to describe something and just putting like before it. You're like really pretty. It was like 3 minutes ago. It was about 3 minutes ago. It was roughly 3 minutes ago. I am working a little bit extra hard on this. No promises that this podcast is going to be smooth sailing and free of the word like as a filler word. This is a new resolution for me. This is something I'm thinking about for a majority of my life. I feel like I feel as though I've used the word like as a filler term, and it's going to be a habit that I have to unlearn. So I don't foresee it happening immediately, but I will be working on it. And if you notice, particularly in this episode of the pod, that I'm slowing down my speech, or if you're watching the video form and you see the gears turning and I look a little confused, it's probably because I'm thinking about my next word. And I'm wondering if I'm going to use the word like unintentionally. Is it normal to think I wish I had a dog collar and it would just shock me every time I said the word like? So I'd quit using it so damn much. Anyways, hello, hi, and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Kayla. If you're new here, this is my podcast called Girl on the Internet because the term influencer, what are we doing? What are we doing with that? We just exist online. So welcome. I am your girl on the internet, Kayla. Thanks for being here. This is my podcast. This is my room. I'm just here to hang out with you, and we're just going to chat for a little bit. Today's non-sponsored beverage of the pod, although this is day 500 of me asking for Olipop to sponsor me because I love you, Olipop. We have a ginger lemon Olipop. If you don't know, Olipop is a prebiotic soda. It just has some good bubbles and other things in here that are good for your gut microbiome. It's just a nice little sweet treat if you're trying to maybe cut back on a soda or you just want a little something different. 10 out of 10 recommend. There are other prebiotic sodas on the market. Olipop is and forever will be my favorite. The ginger lemon flavor is my number one through and through, but they have a lot of good flavors otherwise. If you are tuned into this episode, whether you are listening or watching, I want you to grab your nearest beverage, preferably maybe some water to hydrate or just, something that will keep you hydrated and happy and healthy. Let's grab it and just take a little sip, okay? Ready? Hoping nobody had a bottle of vodka at their nightstand listening and you just chugged that, okay? That was the intention of it being something healthy-ish. For those of you that don't know, I also have a YouTube channel. That is where I post the video forms of this podcast. Sometimes I do daily vlogs. I also do a little bit of lifestyle stuff. But if you don't watch my videos and you're just here for the podcast, I'm excited because I want to share with you guys that I got tattoos a few weeks ago. I went from having 0 to 3, and I could not be more thrilled about them. Highly recommend you tune into the video form of the podcast so you can check it out. But I'm going to do my tattoo tour for you guys. She's a tatted girly now. She's girls with tats. Girls who get tattoos. That's me. She's hardcore. She's amazing. She's incredible. She's iconic. Anyways, back to the tattoos. I'll start with this one on my wrist, forearm area. Hopefully you can see this. It is just a 224. I have a matching tattoo now with my best friend, Logan. We've been friends a very, very, very long time, since childhood, under the age of 10. And we've always thought about getting a matching tattoo, just being friends for so long. We could never really decide on anything, and Pinterest came in clutch. And it just means that I love you today, tomorrow, and forever. So cute. Next up, on the back of my arm, can you see it? I don't even know if you can see it in the camera. Oh, there we go. I think you can see that. I got the Taylor Swift hand hearts. Obviously, I mean, I like to think Taylor Swift invented the hand heart. Honestly, probably not true, but I got the Taylor Swift hand hearts. I wanted to have some kind of Taylor Swift themed tattoo, and the hand heart just felt right for so many reasons. It also just happens to be my number one most used emoji, like, at all times. I just love it. I'm just like, thank you guys so much. It's just such a good one, but also it's Taylor Swift theme, and I love it so, so much. And my last one is on my inner left bicep, and it is my mom and dad and my brother's handwriting, and it just says, love you always. Might arguably be my favorite one so far. I'm trying to remember when I even got them. A week ago? 2 weeks ago? January 19th or 20th, I believe. So they're still relatively new and fresh, and they're healing, but they're doing really great so far. And I was very nervous. I have really sensitive skin. I have like 6 or 7 piercings on my ears. And ages ago, one of my cartilage piercings actually developed a really big keloid. TMI, gross. But I had to get it cut off, removed, whatever. So I was like very nervous for the longest time. I always thought to myself, like, get a tattoo. What happens if it keloids? Or what happens if my skin scars? What happens if my skin gets infected because it's so sensitive, and my luck is my arm gets infected and they have to chop it off? Which, unironically, and I didn't even know I was going to be talking about my tattoos, is a beautiful segue into today's episode, which is about overthinking and how it's ruining your life and how you need to stop. And by you, I mean me. And by me, I mean we. Anybody that's overthinking, we're in this together, okay? Overthinkers Anonymous, we're all in this together. If you're anything like me, you may, on a day-to-day basis, be presented with a very normal situation or scenario. Or maybe you lay down and go to sleep at night and you're thinking about the day that you had, or something really fun that happened yesterday, or something maybe that happened 15 years ago. And the little part of your brain just the gears start to grind, and you start to overthink about all of these things, whether it be something from the past, something happening right now, something that is going to be occurring to you at work or at school the next day, maybe your relationship. Overthinking is something that follows you throughout life. Now, I have met many of people who do not encounter overthinking. And might I ask, what is that like to not overthink? You don't have social anxiety? You don't have anxious thoughts? Oh my God. How does it feel? How does it feel to live my life? How does it feel? Yeah, there are just some people out there who don't overthink chronically. Must be nice. That's all I have to say. There are, for sure, layers to overthinking. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I have seen both, though, and I've learned some things about the psyche regarding overthinking and what it means and why we do it and why our anxiety in our brains and why we have this need and this desire to just overconsume our minds with these what if scenarios, or just not letting go of a topic in our head and just moving on to something else. I've learned a little bit. I'll share a little bit. As you know, I'm not a professional, so take with this what you will, but it's sometimes linked to childhood, so much of our adulthood and our young youthfulness as we grow up, there are some things that stem from like your young adulthood life, whether this be like actual childhood, teenage years. And I know for me, when I've sat with my therapist and we've talked about the overthinking thing before, for me, it goes back to things like in friend groups when I was excluded from something, or when someone would speak to me in a certain way or a certain tone, or I would see people, whispering and then looking over at me. And it just, that's kind of where the overthinking started to stem from. And I think everybody's different. I don't know if this is a trait that you're born with or you can just develop over time, or, the nature versus nurture kind of thing. That's more for the psychiatrist to know, not so much me. But this idea that it can stem from nothing, you can completely overreact in a sense, and you can just blow your thoughts completely out of proportion. Because I don't know about you, but when I overthink sometimes, it's the most absurd left field thing possible. And I know that overthinking has to do a little bit with my anxiety, but it's incredible in not a good way. It's incredible what your mind is capable of, both good and bad. If you think in terms of overthinking and anxiety and panic, how just, I don't even know the word, it's just so fascinating how your brain, the thing that's literally keeping you alive, to have thoughts, to have emotions, can just have a little chemical imbalance that just is up there and goes, hey, overthink this. Hey, what if you get a tattoo and it gets infected and they have to cut your arm off? That would suck. Hey, all your friends actually hate you. Yup. Yup. Hey, remember that thing you said yesterday? Literally everybody is thinking that you're stupid. And when you give that presentation, you were sweating and everyone was judging you. Yeah, okay, bye. I'm sorry, what is all of that about? And how do we make it stop? Okay, how do we make it stop? 1, recommend therapy. Whatever you can do. Maybe you can't afford traditional therapy where you're going to an office, you're doing the BetterHelp thing or whatever it is. If you've got a friend, if you've got someone in your life that you can just like vent to, let that be your therapy. Again, I don't think that overthinking and having anxious thoughts and mentalities is just something that goes away. One of the things that really stuck with me from one of my therapists was if I had an anxious thought about anything, like if I'm getting ready to do something and I'm immediately going to this sentence of what if, like I'll be very transparent. Like sometimes I'll get dating anxiety and I think about matching with someone on a dating app and then I'm thinking about going on a date with them. And then sometimes I flake last minute because my anxious thought is like, what if I go on a date with him and he's a serial killer and then I end up on the news because I got murdered? That's just one example of overthinking. I've overthought in pretty much every category of life possible. One of the things my therapist taught me was if that's where your brain is going to go immediately, instead of just thinking, oh, I'm excited, or like I'm very neutral about going on a date and have a good time, and have a drink, a coffee, a lunch, whatever the plan that you had. If your mind is choosing to go to this worst case scenario, left field place, if that's where your conscious brain is going to take you without asking for your permission to just go to that negative thought, you, as your conscious, aware, outer shell self, needs to take a second, think about the scenario, and ask yourself, well, what's the best case scenario? What's the best thing that could come out of this situation that I'm overthinking about? What's the best case scenario? And that has helped me immensely. It sounds so silly and so small. And if you're someone that's listening and you've never struggled with panic or anxiety or overthinking or intrusive thoughts, you might think this is the stupidest thing you've ever heard in your life. Maybe this episode's not for you. It's a really big deal and it's a really serious thing when you are not in control of your own thoughts and you are doing something and then your brain takes you into a place where you're like, how did we get here? Because I don't want to be here right now. It is a tool that I never thought would work because it seems too easy. When I tell you it has helped me so much in the last few years. I cannot express it enough. Again, think about, oh, I'm like walking home. It's late at night. It's dark. I'm a woman. I'm scared. I don't have any like mace on me. And I see like a kind of a sketchy guy or something walking behind me. I'm immediately thinking, okay, this is it. This is the time that I'm going to get like mugged or attacked or something, which, to be honest, living in America, sometimes that's a very rational thought and that's not overthinking. But there are moments when I think, okay, this is going to end terribly. Like, I'm scared for my life. I don't know what's going on. And then I just take a deep breath and I'm thinking, okay, that's the worst case scenario. This person's walking behind me. It's late. It's dark. I'm by myself. Maybe they stab me. Maybe this ends badly. Maybe whatever. But then I think, what if it's just someone else who's also walking home late at night? What if they just left their shift at the bar or the restaurant and they're just cold and they put their hoodie on over their head and they're just minding their own business and they're going home? Like, what if they're thinking that about me? What if they think I'm the killer? So little tricks like that, which again, they seem a lot easier said than done because it is practice. And which, by the way, all of my overthinking thoughts are not always about like death and getting murdered. That's just like, sometimes they'll pop into my head, but they're not all like about that topic specifically. But that is something that has helped so much. If you've ever been in a sticky situation, if you've ever like your phone dies and you're trying to navigate somewhere, you get lost directionally, you get separated from your friends, your boss sends you an email at 4:58 p.m. saying we're going to have a meeting Monday morning at 9 a.m. And all you can think of is you think of everything you did wrong ever, even when you were a kid, when your boss didn't even know you. Take a deep breath and think about what's the worst case scenario. If you're going to think about the worst case scenario, you have to think about the best case scenario. You have to play the field evenly if your brain is going to take you to the place that you didn't ask to go to. Another thing too that is important is it's okay if you overthink. Overthinking in itself is inherently not a bad thing. It can, to a degree, mean that you are extra cautious or you're extra careful or that you are attention to detail and that you care about things that are happening in your life. I think it's very much an honorable thing if your boss sends you that email at 4:58 p.m. on a Friday and saying, hey, you and I are going to have a meeting Monday morning at 9 a.m. I think it's, to a degree, honorable that you are brainstorming and thinking, what could this be about? It's about my job performance. It's about, am I going to lose my job? Is it something I did well? Is it something I did poorly? I think I'm such a silver lining kind of person. I do find goodness in that overthinking tendency. I mean, I think I would probably rather overthink than just be someone that has no thought going through their head ever. No thoughts, just elevator music. Because it at least to some degree shows that you care and that you are thinking about other things or you are worried about yourself or a situation that you're in or your friends or your family or the well-being of yourself or others. Granted, like anything, it can be taken way out of proportion. It can be negative. It can be debilitating. It can be fill in the blank. So I'm not saying like overthinking is so great, like we're just like all having a good time. But if we can find like a little tiny, teeny silver lining in it, I think, okay, great. Like you are thinking about multiple things here. So giving yourself a little bit of credit when it comes to, at least I care about the situation, at least I'm thinking about it. But there has to be a moment too where you think, I'm going to give myself 2 minutes. I'm going to set a timer, 2 minutes to like get a journal and write down all of my thoughts and why I'm anxious and why I feel such a way and what could this be about? Or just simply writing down why you feel the need to overthink about this situation. Why do you feel the need to overthink about something that happened 5 years ago that's completely out of your control, that we're past, that we've moved on from? You can't change the past. Why are we stuck on it? Giving yourself a little bit of time to think about it, to write it out, can also help you move on from it. I know for me, there have been many times where I'm in a group of people, I say something, I feel stupid, I think about it for the next 6 months or whatever. I feel as though I have so many scenarios, but sometimes when I'm recording the podcast, suddenly I have 0 in my head. You guys play Wordle? Does anyone out there play Wordle? It's like when you play Wordle and you're so pumped, you have a really good first word starter and you get one letter and it's yellow, so you know it's in the word, but it's not in the right place. If I get one correct yellow letter, I'm done. I've forgotten every vocabulary word I've ever learned in my life. I'm like, suddenly I don't know words at all. Same kind of thing when I do the podcast sometimes. I'm like, what are the things I overthink about? And then I'm talking about it and I'm like, maybe I don't overthink, which is not true. Where was I going with this? This is why the professional podcast girlies have like cards and stuff. I use my iPad sometimes, but she was dead. So we're just raw dogging the podcast right now. Why was I talking about? Why did I mention? Oh, okay. I remember why I said what I said. If I have a scenario, for example, I'm with a group of people, I feel like I say something stupid, I feel like everyone's judging me, I think about it for the next 6 months. If I can't stop thinking about it and I am overthinking and it's 6 months after this event happened, sometimes I literally will sit down and I'm like, okay, Kayla, you've been thinking about this nonstop for 6 months. Let it go. Stop. Like, quit. I'd be like having a conversation with my brain. Stop. I think about it and I go, all right, 5 minutes on the timer, grab a piece of paper, write down everything you're feeling about this stupid thing that you said however long ago that literally doesn't matter. Write it down, get it out. Why do you think you feel stupid about it? Why do you think people are judging you? What was the scenario? What did you say? Get it all out. And then when you're done, when the timer goes off, you rip that puppy up, you crumple it up, throw it in the trash, move on. And then you have to make a promise with yourself that if that thought pops in your head again, it's done. We're done. We're over. We had the conversation. We had the discussion. We wrote everything down. We're moving on. And that is also a very helpful tool to me as well. And again, not that easy because your brain is tricky and it can easily make you start thinking about the scenario again. Just because you wrote it on paper doesn't mean it doesn't exist in your memory cabinet up here, but it can be very helpful in terms of we already thought about it. We already discussed it. We already discussed why it's silly to be overthinking on this. I already wrote out reasons why it actually wasn't that stupid and people weren't actually looking at me in the way I thought that they were. And you can move on. Sometimes with anxiety and things that go on in your brain, I've learned, sometimes you just have to gaslight yourself. I'm going to be totally honest. You just sometimes have to think, I'm fine. This is fine. We're moving on from this. We're not thinking about this. We're not going to entertain this thought anymore, this idea, this stressor, and we're moving on from it. Honestly, the vibe for 2024 is just gaslight yourself until you lose your anxiety, period. Of course, I say this all in good taste. I'm not in any way making fun of mental illness or just saying don't be anxious. Yeah, did you ever think about that? Like, just don't be anxious. Like, duh, like, just don't be anxious. Just don't overthink. Hey, just don't have OCD. Hey, just don't do that, In no way am I saying that, but I am saying for me, for some of my coping mechanisms, sometimes I just am delusional and it kind of works. That's how I feel my confidence has kind of boosted over time. Not to say it's like a narcissistic thing or a cocky thing, but sometimes it's like you walk in the room and you think you're the hottest person there or that everybody likes you. And again, not to the level of like Regina George, everyone loves you. But you're kind of just like, you kind of think to yourself, hey, this is kind of nice. I walk into a room and don't automatically assume everybody hates me and thinks I'm ugly and obnoxious and annoying and no one wants me there. If you have the opposite mentality, if you start to be a little delusional and just gaslight yourself, you might surprise yourself. You might see over time the anxious thoughts are a little less. The social anxiety comes down a little bit. Little helpful tools like being delusional can actually come in handy. So if you haven't tried that yet, I'd highly recommend it. If you are struggling with chronic overthinking, just know that you're not alone. It's not stupid. There's nothing wrong with you. There's just a part of your brain that is working overtime and it's not your fault. There's something else going on there. If there's a way for you to reach out to someone professionally that can help you categorize those thoughts or dig deeper and figure out why are you having these thoughts? What's going on? What can we talk about? Of course, I recommend that. I know that that's not available to everybody. So work on little exercises and things like that to try to get you to stop living in this place of overthinking avenue, because it's not a fun place to be. You want to be away from there and doing better things with your life and frankly your time and your energy, because overthinking is the most exhausting thing of all time. I said again, Need the shot collar. Overthinking is such a draining thing. The amount of sleepless nights I've had, the amount of times I've missed hanging out with my friends on the weekends because I've been overthinking about something, the amount of it has just taken a lot of my life and a lot of my time and my energy in such a negative way. So for that, I think it's worth giving these little exercises a try, being delusional from time to time, and just giving yourself some time to process why you're thinking these thoughts. Why have you chronically overthought? Is there something that happened to you recently? Is it something from childhood? Is it how your parents spoke to you? Is it a past relationship where you lost trust? Like what? See if there is a root cause. And there might not be one thing. It could be multiple things. There could be no source. It could just be you're someone that chronically overthinks. And that is okay. And it doesn't always have to be like that. But as I always say, because I mean it, is to go easy on yourself. It's so easy to put yourself in a place of, oh, I'm this like anxious mess. I overthink, and if you have a group of friends and no one has anxiety or no one has these problems, or your family doesn't really believe in the mental health crisis that exists, it can be very challenging because you're like, what do you mean no one else overthinks? What do you mean no one else feels anxious about this scenario or this situation that's happening? I remember like in school, I'd be like in college to the point where I would have to do practicals, which if you're in any healthcare field or maybe other jobs, you have to not only like take written tests, but you'd have to do like a sort of like skit performance of some kind of modality or intervention or something that you learned, or a technique or a practice, or for, like nurses and stuff, I'm sure you had to practice giving IVs and things on like a performance-based test. And I used to overthink to the moon and back, to the point where I would sweat through my school uniform because I'd be so anxious and overthinking about everything. What if I fail this? What if I get this? What happens if this is my scenario? What happens if I didn't study it? What happens if I do the wrong thing? What happens if this? What happens if I run out of time? What happens if I fail this practical and then I like get kicked out of the program? What happens? I have to go to a different college. I have to do this. I have to pick a new profession. Slow down. Just slow down. And that is also another tool. Sometimes when your brain is like rapid firing, making you overthink and just frankly overworking, just take a deep breath and tell yourself, I need to slow down. Let me think one thought at a time and see if I can find the best case scenario and the worst case scenario. Maybe find a happy medium and move on. And that's how I got through college, because the amount of times I'd be taking practical and I'd be like, oh my God, like what if this happens? What if, oh my God, what if I get this instructor and they don't like me? What if I miss a point? Or like, what if I forget to wash my hands and you automatically fail? Like things like that would happen all the time. And guess what? They ended up working out. It ended up being okay. I am a medical professional now. I passed my board exams, passed all my practicals in school. It was fine. I was well prepared. I just overthought it to the point where it was crippling, but I worked on every anxious thought, every overthinking thought that came into my head. I would try not to give it too much attention. I would think about it for a second, weigh the pros and cons, give it some attention, just a little bit, and then move on. And I think that's the only thing that helped me literally pass college and get through it. Because if I let those thoughts rule my brain, what would I be doing now? I wouldn't be where I'm at now. Like, that's for sure. Gotta love anxiety and mental health and your brain. It is truly such a wild thing how our brains work. And I get a little bit of a firsthand look into it working in healthcare, working with brain injuries, working with patients that have strokes or tumors or things on their brain that can change your mentation, your mentality, your mood, your personality, your thoughts, critical thinking, reasoning. It just is, the brain is such an incredible part of our bodies, but at the same time, it can be the most difficult thing to reason with because your brain controls everything. So even when you're like audibly saying out loud, I'm not going to let this anxious thought affect me, it's coming from the same brain that's giving you the anxious thought. What is that about? What is that about? That is crazy if you really think about it. How can I sit here and say, don't be anxious, but then that part of my brain's like, hey girl, actually you really are anxious. Hey. It's like, what? How is that coming from the same place? it really does blow my mind. It is absolutely crazy. That's all I think I have today for this episode in regards to overthinking. Am I overthinking this podcast? Did I say too much? Did I cover everything I wanted to cover? I don't know. We're not going to overthink it though. See what I did there? See what I did? Your random fun fact for the end of this week's episode is, did you know that the name spam is actually a combination of spice and ham? It also says it is not an acronym for scientifically processed animal matter. Spice and ham, everybody. Enjoy your spam. Thank you so much for listening to another week's episode. I appreciate you so much, more than you'll ever know. Hey, if you're listening to the podcast right now, come here. If you're listening to the podcast right now and you really like it, wherever you listen, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere else, please give it 5 stars. Thank you so much. I would like to be able to afford my rent and keep doing this. Thank you. Rate it 5 stars if you really enjoy it. Please share it with people that you feel could relate to it or need a little bit of older sister FaceTiming a friend kind of vibe. Also, if you love me a lot, if you care about my well-being, you go on Apple Podcasts and you would type a review. You would type it. Please? Come here, Daph. Tell him. Come here. Daphne, tell the people to write me a review. Tell them. Yeah. Period. If you want Daphne to have another meal, you would write a review on Apple Podcasts. How are we supposed to live, laugh, love in these conditions if you don't write a review? I'm just saying. I love you guys so much. Thanks for listening. Remember to go easy on yourself. Daph and I will see you next week with a new episode. Say bye, Daph. Bye, guys.